All right, Don's family is going to accept in his behalf Holly Medill and the rest of the Voorheis family. Give it up, Sparty, and give it up, Moot.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Holly Voorheis Medill, and I'm accepting this honor on behalf of my dad, Don Voorheis. And I'm representing his wife, Marianne, and son, Craig, this evening. Thank you, members of the Saginaw County Sports Hall of Fame, for recognizing Don Voorheis' accomplishments. And thank you to his family, friends, classmates, and supporters who are here today to celebrate this honor. I'm sure if he were here, he would also thank his support network of coaches and teammates who helped make his accomplishments possible. I didn't ever get to see Don run in the way that got him this honor. I wish that I had, because I understand it was a sight to behold. To provide some perspective, it's helpful to do some comparisons. But before I do, remember that Don ran at a time when the distance was measured in yards, not meters. The track was cinder, when times were clocked with handheld timers, and when shoe and block technology and athletic training and nutrition were basic at best. When Frankenmuth High School converted his times to meters, they found that he still held the record for the now 100 and 200 meters almost 65 years later. If the MHSAA had recognized records in yards, Don would still hold the 200-meter record, and he would be second in the 100-meter, almost 65 years later. He ran at Madison Square Gardens in New York City among the fastest men in the country, and his times were competitive. Today, Don's times were about 1 and 1.5 seconds off Usain Bolt's world records of the 100-meter and 200-meter, and Scott and Hugh, please fact-check me. I'd like to highlight some of what his classmate Jim Laisel remembered about Don. He was his classmate at both St. Lawrence Elementary School and Frankenmuth High School. And Jim ran the 4x220 relay with Don. And when you're running the last leg of the relay, that's usually reserved for the fastest sprinter. It starts on the curved part of the track and then ends usually in front of the stands on the straightaway. And Jim ran the third leg and handed off to Don, and it was his job to make sure that the race was in 25 yards before passing the baton. So I invite you to close your eyes with me as I relay two scenes from Jim's memory. So imagine Jim handing off the baton to Don, but he was behind maybe. And you imagine after having a sprint like that you might be out of breath and gasping for air. And as Don took off, and Jim was recovering from his sprint, maybe he didn't even need to look to know what was happening to his relay team. He says, "I would listen for the roar of the crowd growing in volume as Don came around the curve and started to pass other runners in the home stretch." Then Jim tells of another scene later. At the end of their senior year, an assembly to recognize athletic accomplishments, Don Voorheis was the only classmate to get a standing ovation from the entire student assembly. Thunderous, rolling, long ovation. Don was deserving, Jim said. Thank you, Jim, for sharing your memories of Don with us. Don's incredible speed and athleticism were only matched by his personality. This I do remember. A kind and a gentle man with a quick and an easy smile. A man of humility who taught us to see everyone as a friend and an equal. In fact, both Forrest Walpole from Cass City High School, he was a competitor, and Jim, a teammate, remember this too. Forrest said, as superb as his athletic ability was, his character was just as superb. He was humble, considerate, and kind, and he looked out for people. And Jim said that Don was a good friend, but he was everyone's good friend because he was easy to like. He had great athletic talent, but he was modest about his superior athletic abilities. I think to see Don run was to be amazed And to have the chance to know him was to love him and to be loved. On his behalf, thank you.